Hey guys, coming at you live again. Title, Eating Together and Keeping It Real. Wanted to talk to you today a little bit about, this is a conversation I've had with more than one client this week. So whether it was something I said or just something in their lives that stirred this up. And then on top of that, maybe it was a little bit what I said, Brent had sent me a podcast to take a look at, and Dan Buettner is his name. He is a guy that has written many articles and a book on blue zones. I don't know if you guys are familiar with those, but blue zones, there are a few of them in this world, right? The first one that he discovered was in Okinawa, Japan, but it is the places where people live the longest without chronic disease. So we now have people that are living the longest amount of years, and they are dying natural, very quick deaths. So it's not, they're not having a heart attack at 50, right? There's no chronic disease, there's no diabetes taking their life. And so it's pretty, if you think about what we've grown up here in American culture, that is unheard of. You hear that someone that typically lives to be 100, 102, and they just die in their sleep. That's not typically what takes most people these days, at least not in our society. So it's these, outlier little places that that he has found that they call the blue zone. So anyways, really great podcast. But he's going through, when I'm listening, he's going through all the stuff that makes these, they're basically their top 10 characteristics of why they thrive the way they do in these blue zones. And one that really hit home to me was that they are communal eating, okay? They're eating with family. And whether that's outside the home in a community setting or just inside their home with whomever lives within their four walls. But they are doing that with every meal. No one eats in isolation. And I think about even my day, breakfast, if Austin's up that early, which he usually is, but doesn't mean we're eating in the same room. So I'm eating my breakfast in isolation, if you want to call it that. So, even the best of intention people, there are times where, you're doing your meals on your own. And I understand that that's, for a lot of us, that's how we get through our day. That's how, you go to eat lunch by yourself after, if you're working at the office. But they're talking about, for the majority of your meals being eaten together as a family. And it was really cool. I started digging into some statistics on this and talking about eating at home versus eating out. Now, granted, the statistic here, 1900, right? In the 1900s, early 1900s, only 2% of meals were eaten outside the house. Obviously, they didn't have the plethora of restaurants that we have now. So that's going to be a little bit, compared to 2018, 50% of the meals are eaten outside the home. But that's still a staggering number of your meals. If you think of 50%, one out of every two of your meals on the average American is eating outside the home. That's crazy, guys. Because when we do that, we usually intake 300 more calories a meal on average when we're not eating a cooked meal in our own home. And that's a lot. If you do simple math, when we've talked about weight gain, and you eat 100 extra calories a day, not even a meal, that's usually 10 pounds a year. Okay, so now we're doing, 300 extra calories a meal that you eat out. Now, doesn't necessarily mean you're always overeating when you're out there. It's just the foods are richer, there's more sodium. We tend to, especially in the evenings, if you're maybe you wouldn't drink at home, but you're out and about, so you have a drink with it. It's what you're supplementing into it, and then the consistency of the food. Because that restaurant wants you to come back. They're gonna make that food taste amazing. More fat, more sodium, just denser, higher caloric food. So, and it's interesting, it depends on what you look at. There's been a lot of studies, because there's been the breakdown of the family meal. So there's a lot of people that are putting out, just the red alarms on this. So depending on where you look, the stats are a little bit different. But 1 in 3 American families eat all 7 meals, nightly meals together a week. That's pretty low numbers. Because we're just talking about just the dinner meals. So it's, again, the statistics and where you look it up, you can get different numbers. But so, the highest one I found was 10% of American families never eat a nightly meal together. So that's still a pretty high number. That's high to me anyways. And the amount of time spent if you are at home eating with family is 20 minutes or less. And there's all these different things about technology pulling us away. You know, my kids just want to be on their phones and stuff like that. So the breakdown of the family meal. But what I'm taking this back to is that these people in these cultures that are living forever without disease and you know, all these other problems that we have in our culture, is that they're taking the time to sit down, chew their food. It's called food hygiene, and it's pretty cool if you actually want to look this up. Food hygiene, there's some stuff to it, but one of the things that they say is to chew each bite until it turns to liquid. I challenge every single one of you in your next meal today, lunch, to sit there and take each bite. See if you can even do like 3 or 4 bites in a row and chew it until the food is liquid. That way you're getting every taste of that bite, right? Because there are some things in the foods that you don't taste until it's broken down to a certain level with the saliva in your mouth. So take a bite, chew it till liquid, swallow, take another one. I guarantee you'll eat less, right? Because we're not just doing this. And I find myself doing that too. So no judgment here. This is a challenge for me as well. So food hygiene, guys. How do we really appreciate the food and eat the right amount of it? It was really interesting. One of the statistics he said in the Okinawa culture is that they will sit down, and the women in particular in that culture say 3 words before every time they eat, before every meal. And they're Japanese words, so I don't know them, but it basically means, it translated to, I will only eat until I'm 80% full. So they know that if they say those words to themselves before the meal, that it reminds them that they don't overeat. And in another culture, I can't remember the other blue zone he was talking about. I'll have to look that one up and post it. But he talked about that every meal within this other blue zone, they break mid-meal and say a prayer. So it slows them down from eating really fast, which I'm assuming if you're in one of these blue zones, you're not fast eaters anyways. However, this is something that they have done for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years, right? Is that they slow their meal times down. They eat less, they appreciate their food more, and their body can take it in better. And I know I've touched on this in the last few weeks when we've talked a little bit about the sleep and the microbiome. I haven't gone into too much detail yet, but just even being able to give your GI tract, right, your digestive system, to not overload it is to chew food all the way down, right? When we do that, it's easier to break down in our gut so that you don't have that massive workload to put on your intestines, which makes them sluggish and slows them down. And I'll touch more on that in a few weeks when we talk a little bit more about the gut. But that's one gift you can give yourself, is to slow down the food, chew it more, and your body is that much more able to digest it. I have a lot of clients to be like, I just eat and I feel sluggish. And some of that problem is coming from the fact that you're not fully digesting your food or helping it digest by chewing it all the way. So your digestive tract's having to do the workload for what these strong jaw muscles should be doing. So, and you know, one of the other things that is a big hot topic right now and has been for years is, you know, schools that are getting rid of home ec. And just a shout out to you parents, because this is something that, you know, I know Axel's only 3, but something that I'm trying to do is just educate him on food. When I had Brent speak last week to you guys, one of the things he said is to start questioning things, right? The system, question it. One thing that I know home economics classes used to teach, and I know that they're not really in the schools now, but teach your kids to see through marketing in the food, right? Gluten-free, wonderful. I don't eat gluten. Gluten-free is wonderful, but what else is in that food? Just because it doesn't have gluten doesn't mean it's really good for you. Typically when they take gluten out of something, they replace it with something else, sugar, fat. So teach them how to look at a label. Teach them how to read between the lines and see the marketing and see what's actually in that food and what every ingredient means. I was talking with a client the other day, and she was talking about having some issues and she just didn't know what it was from. And so we started talking about going back and looking at the food labels and finding, for me, I know in my past, I've come across things that I didn't know I was eating that had an artificial sweetener in it. I don't tolerate those. I can't do any of them, and there is a ton of them out there in the world. I know most of you have seen the articles on all the artificial sweeteners that are out there in our foods now, and they are highly inflammatory, they're gaseous, they can cause a lot of issues in the GI tract. So finding those on the labels and pointing those out. I know it's really interesting listening to this podcast. They were talking about with the home economics not being in schools anymore, California actually has some programs where they are starting as young as, I believe, kindergarten and first graders. Yes, it was. Teaching them what a vegetable is. Most of them couldn't identify what an eggplant was. Some of them couldn't identify a banana as a fruit. That is alarming. So, point to take home out of all this is, if we don't teach our kids, I don't think in this area that I work in, that you guys live in, that's really an issue. It's more about teaching them how to cook for themselves, how to read the labels, so that when they aren't under your roof anymore, they have those tools for themselves. Because it's easy to just eat what mom puts on the table, accept it at good faith, accept it for that it's good. But if you don't teach them how to do it, they won't be able to replicate it. I know I've had clients whose kids have went off to college and they seem to struggle with weight gain, which a lot of us do when we leave the nest. I get that. But weight gain and just not knowing what to eat, or having any sort of basis of education on knowing what that is. So start them young, start them being able to make those choices by themselves. I think one of the best gifts that you can give your kids is to let them cook with you in the kitchen. Messy. You might lose a few eggs being cracked. You might have messes everywhere. But I know whenever I'm doing anything with eggs, Axe gets to come out and crack the egg for me because he thinks it's super cool. Yes, I've lost a few eggs and there's a mess, but it's really fun to watch him learn to do that and understand the ingredients that are being put into his food. So, point for the day, guys, is just get the family back to eating meals at home. And if you are eating meals solo, which is understandable in our world of busyness, and for those of you that travel, sit down and try as hard as you can for that food hygiene that I was talking about. Try to chew each bite to liquid. It's hard. I've done it, and it's like, oh my God, is this meal ever going to get over? But it works, guys. It's the intended purpose of what that does for the GI tract, for digestion, for your mental capacity, for the physical capacity to feel the food, to taste it. It's pretty incredible. So takeaways of the day, guys: slow down your meals, eat more of them at home, cook more of your own foods. I went to the farmer's market that is Urban Harvest, that used to be on East Side, and it's now over at St. John's School, the other day, and I can't believe I haven't been in so long. It is incredible to just taste the fruits and vegetables and the eggs and the meat that is sourced locally versus the stuff that we're buying in the supermarkets. As well-intentioned as I am, the taste is so much better. So my challenge to you guys: slow down your meals, eat more, cook more at home. The invention of the Instapot and the crock pot could not save you more time and make things so much easier on you. You just have to plan a little bit ahead, but it will save you tons of money too. And I know you guys would love to always have more of that. We all would. So again, take a look at this and see what you guys can do for the next week on slowing down your meals, eating more of them at home, buying those good foods that you can chop up with your family, and everybody's part of it. Have a good day, guys.